I was in the third grade, and half the school year had gone by when the teacher announced,
"We have a new student who will be joining our class. His family has just moved here from Boston, Massachusetts, and I want everybody to make him feel welcome. Joe, would you stand up, please? Class, this is Joe Hunt."
I turned around at my desk and I watched as this stocky kid, way taller than everybody else in my class, sheepishly stood up and gave a little wave to everybody and sat back down. And that's how it all began. I was just this dumb kid. I thought it was important that I do my civic duty as requested by the authority figure, my teacher, Miss Congle. So during lunchtime, I introduced myself to Joe and made polite small talk. While talking to Joe, asking him questions about what Boston is like and how he likes our town, etc., I noticed that Joe's eyes had become fixated on the lunch money in my hand. Just a couple of wrinkled up ones that had been carelessly jammed into my pocket. Finally, right in the middle of my list of cool things to do in town, he just slowly reaches over, takes the money out of my hand, and puts it in his pocket. I'm dumbfounded. I look at Joe, and his face is just blank. He's looking at me like nothing happened. I say, "Hey, that's my money. Get your own." Joe just stands there, but now he has this smirk on his face. A smirk that says, "Oh yeah? Prove it. What are you going to do about it anyway?" Finally, Joe says, "You're boring," and just walks away. I was angry and starving. I didn't tell a teacher, I don't know why, but when my mom picked me up that day from school, I just cried and I told her the whole story. When we got home, my mom called the teacher, but Joe had gotten to the teacher first. Joe had gone to Miss Congle after school, crying and saying that I had tried to take his lunch money. By the time Mom got off the phone, I was no longer just angry and hungry, I was also in trouble. Joe had outmaneuvered me on all levels. He had even managed to turn my own parents against me. And there were other things too, so many other things. Joe was a bully. He was physically and psychologically abusive. You know, there's the usual ear-flicking, tripping, knocking books out of your hand, accidentally spilling things on you. And those were the easy things. The psychological stuff was just torture. Just as one example, out of hundreds, there was one time in 5th grade when he punched me in the stomach at school and knocked the wind out of me. I mean, he punched me as hard as he could. When a teacher walked around the corner, Joe dropped to the ground and started fake crying. He told the teacher that I was bullying him, and he was only trying to defend himself. He was still crying when we were in the principal's office. Anytime the principal wasn't looking, he would grin at me with his big, evil smile, while still making the crying noises. God, he was a psychopath. I mean, Joe was dumb as a brick, but when it came to psychological torture, he was a genius. He was a gifted student. He had Michael Jordan-like ability. Of course, I ended up being suspended for getting hit in the stomach. And once again, my suffering was compounded by the disbelief of me from my parents and the subsequent punishment that I would get. Where do you turn when every adult in your life thinks you are the problem? The answer? You turn inward. You start internalizing these things. And when you have all this raw emotion fueling your energy, it's powerful. It almost always turns into a very good thing or a very bad thing. It can inspire you to greatness, or it can crush your spirit. I chose to rise to the occasion. My first step, I waited until my school suspension was a distant memory. Then I asked my mom if I could take karate. I played up all the physical fitness and discipline parts of it, and she agreed. All I wanted to do was to be able to defend myself. My mom would drop me off at this big martial arts school every Tuesday through Saturday. What she didn't know was that the school offered way more than just karate. I was a driven student. I was a sponge. I learned everything I could about anything I could use as a tool in my arsenal. I learned karate, jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, boxing, kickboxing, the finer points of grappling. The martial arts school even had a self-defense class. They would teach people, just normal, average, everyday people, how to escape from an assault or disarm somebody with a gun. They would teach you how to shatter various bones of a would-be attacker, defend yourself against an attack from behind. And I wasn't just soaking up the knowledge and ability from the martial arts school. As I got older, I read books and took classes in everything from neurolinguistics and hypnotism to the art of war and a modern updated version of the anarchist cookbook. I had also joined a gym. I was lifting and eating tons of protein, getting big, but also I started teaching at the martial arts school and doing CrossFit, playing squash. During these years, Joe had backed off a bit. He would still look for any opportunity he could to cut me down in front of people, get under my skin, get other people to turn against me, and even get the teachers suspicious about what kind of person I was. But I refused to respond. Nobody knew anything I was doing. I didn't even talk to my closest friends about it. Even my mom just thought I was still taking karate classes. I disguised my physique in baggy clothes and I walked around with a slumped posture. But in reality, I was becoming exceedingly strong. And that strength was compounded by my other abilities. I was deftly agile physically and mentally and really able to handle almost anything you could possibly throw at me with incredible grace, with wit and emotional intelligence. Now to put the cherry on top of all of this self-transformation, right after graduation, I joined the Marines. I thought I was a tough guy, but the Marines taught me real discipline. I can't get into what my entire career involved, but I'll say this. I'm incredibly proud of the work I've done and how far I've been able to push myself and rise as a Marine. I've had the honor of serving the best of the best, men and women, with abilities that are far superior to my own, people I'm proud to call my family. And it was here in the Marines that I finally understood personal responsibility, real sacrifice, what respect really means. And most of all, I learned to live my life with honor. Finally, I understood what being a man is all about. In March of 2018, I was able to travel back home and spend an extended amount of time with my family. One night while back home, me and a couple of buddies went out to a local bar in my hometown. I say bar, but it was a real cheesy chain-type place because we all wanted to get some ribs. And unfortunately, I don't live in Memphis, St. Louis, Alabama, Texas, so there's no getting the real thing. Our waiter comes over to get our drink order. It's Joe. Joe is fat. Real fat. And he's wearing some kind of red and white striped, goofy circus-looking shirt and suspenders with buttons on it. And yeah, he recognizes me. Oh, hey, Name. I haven't seen you in a while. What have you been up to? Oh, me and my buddies here have just been in name of country, name of country, name of country, and name of country, killing other humans professionally. And yourself? He just glanced around at everybody at the table. I have to say, while you imagine this in your head, my group of buddies are a scary bunch of hardcore-looking guys. Sweethearts, but they're scary-looking. And that's when I decided to do it. I said, and by the way, these comments are censored for your pleasure. I said, actually, I'm glad I ran into you tonight, Joe. You've got some payback coming, you know? You are a real a-hole. I mean, a real a-hole. A real sociopath. You treated me like S for no reason at all. And the only thing I did was try to be your friend when you had no friends. You single-handedly made me hate school and hate my life. Hey, man, I was just a kid. Shh, I'm not finished. I hope when all this is over, you'll go home tonight and you'll think about what a giant tool you are. And as far as the payback goes, I stood up from the table. My buddies all stood up with me instinctively in a show of solidarity. Joe flinched as I stuck out my hand. Thank you, Joe. I owe you that. If it wasn't for you being the biggest a-hole that ever walked the face of the earth, I would have never had the amazing life I've had, or be as honored as I am to call these guys my brothers. Joe looked at me like he was trying to figure out if I was serious. Then he put his tiny, limp, wet, soft, lily-white hand into my giant, hairy hand, and we shook on it. And that was it. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who wished I would have beaten his ass, but of the many things I've learned through my transformation from a boy to a man and then into a machine is this. It's true. Living well really is the best revenge. And I also slashed his tires. I couldn't help it. When somebody says they're from a small town, I just have to chuckle a little to myself. My town wasn't even a town. My hometown literally had more cattle than people. It was all agriculture, just fields and forests. The population of where I grew up was under 100 people, and even then, they were spread out over about 1,600 square miles. When I was in school, I had to catch a bus every morning at 5 a.m. The bus would drive all over these country back roads, picking up other kids who also lived in the boonies. School's from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., then onto the bus again, and back home around 6:30 in the evening. There was exactly one business within 20 miles of where I lived. So after I turned 17 years old, that's where I got my first job. Danny's Gas and Convenience. It was a weird place. There was not, nor had there ever been, anyone named Danny involved with it. The man who opened up the place in the 50s or 60s was named Isvor, and he figured people around these parts would feel more comfortable with somebody named Danny than Isvor. In fact, everybody called Isvor Danny just because they all figured naturally the man who opened up Danny's would be named Danny. By the time I went to work there, his son had taken over. His name was Danny, but everybody called him Buddy. I have no idea why, but I digress. It was your usual gas station convenience store, but during the day they also made fried chicken and sandwiches there. There's a story that they also used to sell moonshine up there until, sometime in the late 70s, but I wasn't alive back then, so I couldn't tell you for sure, but it seems plausible. So the town itself wouldn't be able to keep a gas station in business, but this place was right next to the highway. It was a struggle to keep the place open. The constant parade of customers had slowed down to a trickle, more and more as the highways were built. These interstates were bigger and faster and smoother and more of a direct route to go between any of the cities and towns around us, so that highway was rarely used by anyone outside of our town. And at night, it was rare to see even one car go by. But apparently, Buddy felt like enough people came through that it was worth keeping the gas station open with convenience store 24/7. Naturally, as young as I was, I got the overnight shift. At first, I was scared to be there alone, late at night, out in the middle of nowhere. But by the end of my first month working there, I would get nervous every once in a while when I heard a strange noise or convinced myself a customer was about to rob me. But after 6 months of working there overnight, I didn't even give it a second thought. I was an old pro now. Unflappable. Cool as a cucumber. Flash forward to my senior year of high school. I was now 18 and I was approaching my 1-year anniversary of working at Danny's. It was super late Sunday night, like around 3 o'clock in the morning. I was reading some book for school when I noticed I had been feeling a slight vibration in the stool I was sitting on, accompanied by the sound of a deep rumble. I looked up through the front window and there was a dark red, almost black, big rig in the lot. An 18-wheeler, tractor trailer, the giant truck hauling a giant trailer. Well, this was odd. I had never seen a big truck on the lot before. I mean, we didn't sell diesel fuel, and we had a big metal canopy over the pumps that would have prevented somebody that size from fueling up anyway. I figured he had pulled over to sleep or something, and that was fine by me. It's not like our lot was packed out with cars or anything, so I just kept reading. The sound of the truck kept reverberating through my head, but I was trying not to get annoyed at it. About 30 minutes of this passed by when suddenly I noticed the sound had disappeared. I was about to look up to see if the truck was still there when I heard the door chime. I looked up at the door, and standing in the doorway, holding the door open, about to enter, was an extremely well-dressed man. He had a half smile on his face and said,
"May I come in?"
"Sure," I said. No offense to any truck drivers, because I know what a difficult job that can be for my uncle who's a truck driver, but this guy was the last person I expected to come walking through those doors. First of all, like I said, he was very well dressed, like somebody you would see in GQ or something. I can't remember everything about his outfit, but the things that stood out to me were he was wearing no socks. He had a pocket square in his jacket. He had wavy, thick shampoo commercial hair down to his shoulders and sunglasses on. Yeah, sunglasses at 3 o'clock in the morning. Also, just another odd thought about him. He spoke proper English. It wasn't a British accent. It was proper old school American, like you hear in old radio shows or movies from the 40s. Everything about this guy was the opposite of anything that ever belonged in this town or anybody I've ever seen drive a truck. So this guy comes in and he starts walking up and down the aisles. But he really doesn't seem to be paying much attention to anything on the shelves. Even though he has his head tilted down and sunglasses on, I can tell he's mostly looking up at the corners and the ceiling, like he's looking for security cameras. He goes down every single aisle before he comes up to the register.
"Do I need a key for the washroom?"
"Yeah, hang on." I pull out the key, which is attached to a 1-foot-long heavy chain. As I go to hand it to him, he pulls off his gloves. I hadn't even noticed he was wearing gloves, but he had on these expensive-looking, smooth leather, what I would call driving gloves. But when he pulled them off, I couldn't help but notice that his fingernails were crazy long. Not like he forgot to cut them for a couple of months or something. They were so long they had started to curl up, and his hands were paper white, like they had never seen the sun, which was extra odd because this guy looked fairly tan. Also, his hands looked like they belonged to an old person. Like, I could see all these blue veins in his knuckles and his fingers. It was super gross, but I acted like nothing was wrong. And super weird because this guy looked to be pretty young. You know, somewhere between 25 and maybe 35. So, dude walks to the back, goes to the restroom, and I'm trying not to freak out. Ordinarily, if anybody came in who was a stranger and started looking around to see where the security cameras were, that would put me on edge. But that didn't bother me. What bothered me about this guy was, well, everything. Everything was just off. From his clothes to the way he talked, to his weird old hands and expensive clothes. It was all just deeply weird. I was thinking about calling the highway patrol, but I knew I had nothing to report. They're not going to send somebody out because somebody with weird hands came into the store. So I just stood there and waited for him to be done. The guy had been in there for about 10 minutes when a kind of miracle happened. The sheriff came in. I was so happy to see him I could have cried. Hey, Sheriff, what's up?
Give me 2 packs of Marlboro Reds.
Busy night tonight?
It was busy earlier, but it's kind of slowed down now a little bit.
Hey, do you think you could hang around here for a minute? There's this customer who's been in the bathroom for about 10 minutes, and he's just giving me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, I can give you a few minutes, if that'll help.
Yes, that would be so good. Thank you so much. The sheriff said something into his radio that I think means he's taking a few minutes for food or a bathroom break or something, and then he gives him the location of our store. And we wait. Another 5 to 10 minutes goes by. Then the sheriff walks to the back of the store where the restroom is. He jiggles the handle a bit and says,
"Hello? Anybody in there?"
There's no reply. He tries again.
"Hello? Anybody in the bathroom?"
Still no answer. So sheriff comes back to the counter and asks,
"Are you sure he's still in there?"
"Yeah, I saw him go in there. He hasn't come out. He hasn't returned the key. Plus, you can't lock the door from the inside unless you're inside." He goes back to the bathroom once again, knocks, shouts, and when he gets no answer, he says,
"Okay, have it your way. I'm gonna have to bust down the door if you don't open it."
And when he still gets no answer, that's what he does. He kicked the door right below the doorknob, and the door just busted wide open. I could see from the counter that the bathroom was empty. Sheriff walked back up to the counter and handed me the bathroom key he had found on the sink.
"Maybe he left when you weren't looking."
"No, he didn't. That's his truck out there. If he left, why did he leave his truck out there?" Sheriff went outside. I saw him knock on the truck door before climbing up to the driver door and cupping his hands to the window so he could see in. He then walked to the back of the trailer and seemed to be reading the license plate. After that, I lost track as I had my usual super early morning rush of 3 regular customers all at once. When I was able to look outside again, another sheriff and a highway patrol was on the lot. And a big rig tow truck was pulling in. They hitched it up and pulled the big rig away. When they were done, the other 2 cops left and the sheriff came back in and talked to me. He made me tell him my side of the story again, officially, and he wrote it all down. But afterwards he explained it to me. He said, this big rig came back as stolen from a town 5 states away from me. He said the driver and the truck had been missing for nearly 2 months. He showed me a photo of the missing driver, but I didn't recognize him. It was definitely not the guy who had come into the store. And really, that's the whole story. Every once in a while, I Google the truck driver's name to see if there's any new information, but all that ever comes up is some auto injury attorney who has the same name. Nothing new, ever, in the missing driver. My friends keep saying the guy who came into the store was a vampire, and they come up with their theories and proof, but I just keep reminding them there's 2 reasons that can't be true. Number 1, the guy had a tan. Come on, vampires don't have tans. And number 2, vampires don't exist. But this is all still a mystery to me, and I would love to hear any theory on this very odd guy and how he just disappeared.
Hello, Mr. Shock. I'm sorry, I'm not really sure how to do this. I guess I'll just tell you the problem. My name is Amanda. I'd rather not give my last name if that's okay. At least I hope it's okay. It's hopefully not important for what I'm wanting to do here. Gosh, I'm off to a bad start. It seems like I've forgotten how to talk to people. I'll just get to the point. Recently, I've been exploring, or I guess frequenting, websites of a certain nature, and one person in one forum recommended I message you regarding my incidents. Nobody in my family has taken me seriously due to the nature of my problem, so I'm a bit nervous talking about it. I'm going to take a deep breath and force myself to type this out. It all started on March 3rd, the day right after my 21st birthday. I got a call on my landline. It had no listed name. I know very few people have landlines these days, but my parents insist on paying for it, and I still live with them, so what am I gonna do? Anyways, the phone call, when I answered it, there was no voice on the line, just static. And then this weird, frankly, spooky sound that I can't quite explain. It was so weird, and it was so scary sounding. I just kept saying, hello? 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 But I never received an answer. I figured it might be a prank or a bad connection, so I just hung up. But I looked through the caller ID, and no matter how much I scrolled through the numbers, there wasn't a single call listed at that time. I didn't receive a call at that time, according to my caller ID. Okay, so that was weird, but I didn't really think too much of it. But then, things started to disappear. The first thing I noticed was, well, my underwear. Not the ones I was wearing, thank God, but I seriously had like 6 pairs of nice, fairly new underwear that was just gone out of my chest of drawers. About a week later, it was a sock. Okay, this one happens all the time, right? One of a pair of socks goes missing, no big deal. But this happened to be the sock that I was wearing. I took off my shoes after I got home from work, and I was only wearing one sock. And yes, I'm sure I went out with 2 socks on that morning. Exactly 1 week later, what should go missing but my, quote, nice bra that I only wear out on dates. No, I was not wearing it at the time. Anyway, it's like clockwork, and it's been going on for at least 6 months. Every week, one type of item disappears from my life. And while maybe losing an article of clothing isn't so bad, it's gotten progressively worse. After I'd finished going through my wardrobe, my favorite coffee cup mug was gone. My boyfriend was nice enough to buy me a new one, but even he just teases me about being forgetful. But the next week, nothing had gone missing the whole day, so I invited my boyfriend over that evening in hopes that he would believe me. Maybe he would witness something. Well, there we were in my room, when all of a sudden, this framed 8x10 photo of me and my grandfather just crashes to the floor. I couldn't figure out why it had been smashed instead of disappearing, but then it dawned on me. I checked, and sure enough, there was no nail in the wall. My boyfriend refused to believe me that the nail disappeared, and he spent at least half an hour searching through the carpet and moving furniture to find it, but no luck. All this, and he still doesn't believe me. If it was just all small things, it would be weird and still make me nervous, and I would still think it would be worth exploring, but let me bring you up to date with how bad it's gotten. Here are some of the awful things that have happened to me most recently. My brake fluid disappeared. Yep, I was driving along when I came to a red light, pushed the brake, and nothing happened. I finally had to put all my weight on the brake just to get the car to slowly coast into the intersection. And after I had it towed, the shop said I had virtually no brake fluid. Imagine how terribly that could have gone. Also missing, my grandmother's wedding ring, which is the only thing I have that belonged to my grandma. And now, one of my fish is gone. I have a fairly large aquarium and I take really good care of it. And one of my fish was a giant angelfish named Daryl. He was almost 5 inches long, which is giant for an angelfish. One day I come home and he's just gone. I don't have any fish that would kill him or eat him. There are no remnants. It's as if he never existed. Maybe all these things wouldn't matter to another person, but I just can't help but think, if all these things can disappear, including living things, how long will it be before the people in my life start disappearing? Is that crazy to think? I don't want to come across as overdramatic, but I'm scared. I'm not up on my types of ghosts or whatever. Maybe somebody put a curse on me or something. I don't know. I don't know anything about this stuff, and I'm starting to freak out. I've looked online, I've searched forums and posted on message boards for months, and I cannot find one single person with the same circumstances as I have. Do I need a Catholic priest or a shaman to smudging my house? Please, somebody, tell me what to do, and please hurry. I'm convinced I'm almost out of time.